Welcome to First Down Punts, a show about the on-field and off-the-field news in the world of pro football, as well as how it relates to fantasy football all season long. Thanks for joining in, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And welcome in to another episode of First Down Punts. I'm your host, Coach Chris. Today we're going to be doing our top 25 for 2025 wide receiver rankings. These will mainly be for redraft or, keeper league, stuff like that. But even in Dynasty, you can use these and to apply to how you should value somebody for this year. But this is mainly for 2025 fantasy football, and that's what we're going to be going through. Before we get into that, a couple things of note in the NFL news. Free agent running back Nick Chubb has signed with the Houston Texans, which kind of dampers Joe Mixon's fantasy value. I had him at like 23 or 24. He's going to be dropping from that if Chubb's going to be there, and they're going to be splitting time, mainly because they're both really good backs, but neither one of them are going to get all the carries now. Whereas before Chubb signs, Mixon still had a chance of getting the majority, 80% of the carries, 75% of the carries, with Pierce behind him and Dario Gumbawale and all that. But between them drafting a guy and now signing Chubb, I'm wondering if Mixon's even healthy enough to start the season right now. I can't confirm any of that, but just things I'm wondering. And is it possible that he gets cut and Chubb's a starter? If so, that'd be very interesting and somewhere that maybe Chicago could sign. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins visiting the Broncos, which is another guy Chicago could sign if they don't end up trading for a running back. I just can't see them going into the season with just DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. So I'm still expecting Chicago to make a move. But Houston made a move to get one of the, if healthy, better running backs in the NFL. So we'll see what happens with that. Another thing that happened today, Green Bay defensive back Jair Alexander is released finally, which I don't know why they would wait this long. I know they were trying to figure something out. They asked him to restructure. I guess there was a no given that answer, and he ends up getting cut. Be interesting to see where he goes. I put out there on social media, I think he should go to the Vikings because they still need DB help. But a couple other teams, could be the Falcons, could be the Rams, and even the Cardinals could look at a guy like this, say, hey, when healthy, Jair Alexander is still one of the top 10 corners in the league, probably. So just something to note, something to be paying attention to. Maybe your favorite team signs him. And the last thing of note is Cincy linebacker Jermaine Pratt was released, which I guess T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are all playing both ways because they won't sign the rookies. They won't re-sign Hendrickson to a big deal. Now, maybe they're trying to clear some space here for Hendrickson. But right now, they don't have very many defensive players ready to play in week one. Hopefully that gets figured out and they get everything lined up or make a trade with Hendrickson, get some pieces back along with some draft picks. I don't know. But I'm not sure what Cincy's doing on defense this year, and I don't think they do either. Other than that, guys, we're going to kick this off, get in our top 25, starting with number 25. That's Jameson Williams, Detroit Lions. Last year, he had 58 catches for 1,001 yards and 7 touchdowns. The biggest reason I put him up here at 25 is because they didn't add anybody, guys. They brought Tim Patrick back, and they drafted a Tesla guy, which I'm still waiting to see what his role is. I think it'll be more about competition for Tim Patrick than Jameson Williams. And I think Jameson Williams could hit the 70 catch mark this year in like a 1,210 touchdown range. If he does, he'll probably finish higher than 25. But that's the whole thing. I'm not willing to. I love the Lions. Love Jamo, what his capabilities are. Add in he had 61 rushing yards last year and a rushing touchdown. So he's got some other capabilities that could put him in a staple back conversation if he gets a lot more of those carries. But with Ben Johnson leaving, I'm not sure what the offense is going to be. But Jameson Williams is still the number 2 there that maybe could take a little bit away from Amon-Ra or get a couple of those Tim Patrick and Sam Laporta catches and hit that 1,100, 1,200 yard mark, hit that 65, 70 catch mark, and bump him up the ranks. But right now I'm keeping Jamo at 25 because I do believe he belongs in the top 25. There's a couple guys I was looking at, the Zay Flowers, the George Pickens. These are some of the guys that didn't make the list. The Rashee Rice, I didn't put them in the top 25 because I have questions about those guys, about how much they're going to get. And Zay Flowers is more about you're never going to be a dominant number 1. You're a catch guy. And if those catches go somewhere else this year, I don't know if you'll hit the same marks that you hit last year. So that's why I didn't put those guys right there at 25. I gave it to Jameson Williams. And like I said, I think he could finish in the top 15, no problem, if he bumps those numbers up a little bit more. But right now I got him at 25 because it's risk versus reward there. He's the big player, but at the end of the day, he's not consistent with catches and stuff. So you see that with the 58 last year. He didn't hit 80 or nothing like that. I need a guy. If I'm drafting a guy to be my number one, number two receiver in this situation, maybe number 3, depending on if you're a 10-team league or 12-team league, you want a guy that's got the boom factor, but you want somebody else at that first and second spot that you can count on for points every week. And it's not just, he wins me this week, but he got 2 catches for 40 yards the next week. So I need Jameson to be more consistent with his production for me to say you're moving up this board where I'll draft you that high. So number 24, guy I had on my team last year. It's a roller coaster ride at times with him, but Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, with all the nonsense he had going on in Tennessee at quarterback last year, still finished with 64 catches, 1,017 yards, and 4 touchdowns was the problem last year. If he gets that up to 8, everybody feels a lot better about Calvin Ridley. Well, now he's got a real quarterback in Cam Ward. And Cam Ward's going to have his struggles, as most rookies do. But the one thing I don't think he's going to struggle is throwing the ball to Calvin Ridley. I think Calvin Ridley is probably going to hit the 85, 90 catch mark this year and have no problem going over 1,000. And if he gets, like I said, 8, 9 touchdowns, he shoots up the board another 10 spots. And I think Calvin Ridley is one of the better values in the draft ADPs right now. Some places got him going as like the 35th best wide receiver. And I don't know how he could even finish down there barring injury or total collapse from Tennessee. Because the fact that they have a quarterback I believe in already gives me the hope that Calvin Ridley can be that much better. So that's why I put him here. We'll move on to number 23. Another guy I've had roller coaster rides with, Courtland Sutton, Denver Broncos. Last year, Courtland Sutton had 81 catches for 1,081 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, I had Courtland Sutton for 2 years in a row. He didn't catch 8 touchdowns between those years. The last 2 years, he's done much. Last year, I think it was just last year, he did much better. It might have been the last 2 years now. He's had like 7, 8 touchdowns apiece. But I've always been a believer in Courtland Sutton. I just couldn't keep torturing myself with fantasy. But with a real quarterback in Bo Nix, who is so much better, we talked about that. He's a staple back than I definitely expected. And I'm sure most of us, he outperformed what all of our expectations were, short of some Oregon fans and some Bronco fans. He probably did much better. And Courtland Sutton's a beneficiary of that. You get Courtland Sutton out there as number 1. They didn't really add anybody short of Pat Bryant at receiver. So they got him, Bryant, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin. They got him. But the biggest thing is Evan Ingram. I would put Courtland Sutton up in the teens, probably around 14, 15, 16, somewhere like that, if it wasn't for the addition of Evan Ingram. I think Evan Ingram could finish the team as the number 1 receptions leader for the Broncos this year. So I got Courtland Sutton down here at 23 because I still think he's the number 1 receiver. I just don't know if he's going to be the number 1 receiving option. And if that's the case, even if he hits these numbers, he's still finishing in, around 20 or something. So if he can repeat last year's numbers of 81 for 10, 80, and 8, you're going to be happy with Courtland Sutton because you're not drafting him as a top 20 player or something. You're drafting him as a number 2, number 3 receiver, and he can perform as a number 2 every week. So you're happy with that. You're happy to have him, and you move on. Number 22, Devonte Smith. I put Devonte Smith here simply for the fact that one thing we know about Philly, when him, A.J. Brown, and Goddard are all healthy, none of them dominate. And if it is, it's usually A.J. Brown. Devonte Smith will have his pop-off game every 6-7 weeks. But when all 3 are healthy, Devonte Smith doesn't get enough target acquisition, doesn't get enough opportunity because Jalen Hurts does a really good job of spreading the ball to all 3 of them, so they're all kind of happy. None of them are dominating, but they're all satisfied with getting opportunities. And Devonte Smith is still an uber-talented player. You see if Goddard goes down or A.J. Brown misses time, Devonte Smith goes off. And the same for the other 2. When one misses time, it's kind of like San Fran when they had Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle. One would miss, the other 2's stats would shoot through the roof. When they came back, it just leveled back out to where all 3 of them were doing similar stats. You know what I mean? It's not something you're ever going to count on them to be dominant. So you can't put them up there in that wide receiver 1 conversation. And as much as I would like to, even high number 2, Devonte Smith is still a guy that you have to be hesitant to put up there. As exciting as it is to watch him play football with the ball in his hands, the number of time he gets the ball in his hands goes down when everybody's healthy. So unless they trade Goddard before the season, I got him here at 22 and hoping that he can outperform that, but not counting on him to. Counting on him to finish right here around 20 to 25 range because of the shared opportunities. Number 21, I got Chris Olave. Now, his talent probably puts him higher than this. But the concussions, I have to take into account, guys. I've said this before. I'm always going to account for injuries. I'm not, like, as much as people want to say, oh, Tyler Shuck sucks, I think Tyler Shuck's going to have a rough start. I'm a big Tyler Shuck guy. I've said this in a ton of videos, guys. If you don't understand that by now, you ain't been listening. So go back and review, because I love Tyler Shuck. I just think it's going to take him 6 to 8 games to really get in rhythm. And depending on how well the Saints offensive line plays is going to be a big determining factor in how well the offense plays. But Olave's still the number one there. They got Rashid Shaheed. They got Juwan Johnson at tight end. Nothing really threatening to Olave. I would have preferred that they got another guy. I had him actually taking McMillan at 9 in I think the first mock draft I did earlier in the offseason. I was like, I think they could get him, not knowing if Olave can stay healthy. But Olave's still a super talented player. He's just not somebody I can depend on as a number 1 or number 2 receiver. I mean, in a 12-team league, yeah, he's a number 2, late number 2 here. But in a 10-team league, he's your first number 3 receiver. I still love the player. Just the confidence of him staying healthy has been shaken, to say the least. But Olave 21, I feel like that's a fair value for him, knowing that he's talented. He could outperform this, but I'm not going to count on him till I'm counting on him that he's probably going to miss a couple games for whatever reason. And there's going to be some struggles with the offense to start off the season. So I can't rake him up there as like 12th, 13th guy, knowing that I'm not confident in the Saints to get off to a hot start. So Olave at 21. We'll move on to number 20, Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, a lot of people believe Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to come in and be his dad right away, and he's going to be a number 1 wide receiver right away. That didn't happen. Marvin Harrison still had like 850 receiving yards last year. He showed that he's a capable receiver. But the way Arizona uses him is the questions I have. I wanted them to draft another receiver or sign another guy so Harrison can move into a more closer to the line of scrimmage routes. He ran a lot of deep routes last year that he didn't win on all of them, and it hurt his statistical output. Whereas if they put Harrison in the slot or let him be a guy that can feed off a deep ball guy, you're going to see a lot more out of Harrison and of what we were expecting for him to be in. But like I said about drafting rookies, I'm never going to be big on drafting rookies early simply for the fact that it generally takes most rookies time to adjust to the speed of the NFL, to understanding how smart some of these DBs are about how to guard their routes, how much tape they watch, preparing for you. Not all colleges are doing that. Pros are doing that. They got millions of dollars on the line. Now, colleges do too. You'd hope it improves. But at the end of the day, Marvin Harrison Jr. still has to prove that he can be that true number 1. It's not about a talent question. It's about, can he do it in the NFL? I believe he can develop into that. I just don't believe when they don't add anybody to help take him out of what they were using him to do last year, it's going to be hard for him to go 1,300 yards. I think he'll probably end up getting 950, 1,000, maybe hits that 1,100-yard mark this year because they do stick him in the slot some more. They do use him in different routes. But if they're going to use him as much as they did last year on deep routes, you're going to see a similar output. And you're still going to be happy as your late number 2, early number 3 receiver, what he does. But don't draft him as your number 1 receiver, guys. That's all I'm trying to give you advice on here. Don't count on Marvin Harrison as being the 12th best receiver in the league just off of talent. It also matters what Kyler Murray does. It matters how they use him in that offense. And right now, I got Harrison down here at 20 simply for the fact that I need to see them use him a different way in that offense to really let his talent blossom into what he was supposed to be. They need to put him in different slots, different positions, different routes that they have him running than just being a go ball deep guy. I need him to see more from him. So until they do, I'm going to leave him down here at 20. If I see some more of that in the preseason, I may jump on and say, just for a video for him, move him up your ranks before you draft. You know what I mean? But I need to see it before I believe it. Number 19, long-time record-setting receiver. That's Mike Evans, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Mike Evans, I think he finished as like the 12th or something like that, best receiver last year. But Godwin got banged up. McMillan didn't come on until really late in the season. And Mike Evans still hit 1,000 yards. He went for, 74 for 1,004 yards. He barely passed the mark, and 11 touchdowns, though. So 11 touchdowns are always nice. Baker's out there winging it, so I don't have a concern about opportunity. But he is getting older. Godwin is back. They drafted Egbuka. McMillan's still there. The tight end, K. Dotton's still there. I think this might be the first year we see Mike Evans not hit 1,000 yards. Now, he'll probably still go over 900, hit 950. He might get right around 1,000 yards. But I could definitely see this being the year that he doesn't hit it. And if he ends up with 65 for 950 and you draft him as a late number 2, you're going to be okay. If you draft him as a number 1, a late number 1, because you waited, you might be a little disappointed. But that's why I got him down here at 19, because I want you to understand I'm expecting a little bit dip in his production. And if that goes from 74 to 68 catches and 1,004 to 950 and 11 touchdowns to 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, because somebody else gets those extra touchdowns he got last year. Godwin stays healthy all year because they're not asking him to do as much with the Puka there. I feel like it's just going to be spread out a little bit more. Anytime you got a team that adds receiving options, generally the opportunities get spread out, especially good ones like Puka. So I expect Mike Evans to have a good season. He might miss a game or something just for whatever. He's always got something lingering. But Mike Evans is still a guy you can trust to be a starting fantasy receiver on your team. He's just going to be the bottom half of those number 2 receivers is where I got him because that's where I feel like I could trust him as. So you get that out of him, you're going to be happy because you probably waited to draft some guys. I just wouldn't wait to draft him as my number 1. I want him as a number 2 receiver this year. So number 18. Here's a guy that's going to be a lot higher on some people's boards. But I can't put him that high yet. Partially because the guys I have ahead of him, partially because my opinions on the situation with his team, and that's Ladidi McConkey, Lad McConkey. Lad McConkey last year, I think he went for 82 for 1149 and 7. That's great stats. It reminds me kind of Amon-Ra St. Brown stats. His first couple years, not necessarily last year. He had like 110, 115 catches last year. But Lad McConkey is a guy, great slot receiver. Nothing to knock on him. But I think with the additions of Mike Williams, Trey Harris, Quentin Johnson still being there, they went and got Tyler Conklin at tight end, drafted Aronde Gadsden. They added a lot of receiving options, whereas last year it was Ladidi and Q, man, and Quentin Johnston. And Quentin Johnston you couldn't count on. So it was a lot of Ladidi. I could see him getting similar catch range, 80 catches, 85 catches. He might hit the 90 mark. But I don't know if he's going to hit that 1150 again. He might only end up with 1,050, might end up with 1,000. You know what I mean? And the 7 touchdowns, I hope that he gets those again. But with bigger options in the red zone, quarterbacks tend to sometimes throw those balls up to those guys as opposed to hitting a slot receiver underneath. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ladidi explodes, gets 100 catches, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. I'll admit that I'm wrong when I'm wrong. But in my mindset right now, I can't put Ladidi up there with the other rookies from last year with Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors and those guys because there's guys that are going to have better opportunities based on the situation they're in for offense. And like I said, with the Chargers adding to Trey Harris and bringing Mike Williams back, that gives them other options instead of just having to force feed their slot receiver. Because that's what I feel like some of Lad McConkey's success was last year is he was just being force-fed balls. Just all day long, man. He was the guy that you could count on, the only guy you could count on. Now, maybe Mike Williams gets banged up again, you can't count on him. Quentin Johnson, you still can't count on him. But Trey Harris, you can't count on him. Then Ladidi's going to have another great season, and I was wrong about where to put him here. I like Trey Harris. I still think Mike Williams has plenty of talent when on the field. If they can get half a season out of him and half a season out of Quentin Johnson, they'll have 3 good receivers because I'm a big Trey Harris guy. I like him. I think it's going to help that offense. I think it's going to hurt Lad McConkey a little bit statistically. So I got him here, like I said, at 18 with the hope that he outperforms that, but I can't draft him higher. I'm not going to pay the high price that you see a lot of people having him at, not knowing if he can dominate. I've never been one that thought McConkey could dominate the field, dominate other players. I think he was just a opportunist last year where he had so much opportunity that he couldn't fail. And I think Ladidi McConkey is still going to have a good season. I'm just not going to draft him as a top 10 receiver because I don't believe he's going to finish as a top 10 receiver. On to number 17, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, last year, Njigba had 100 catches, 1,130 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. The touchdowns you'd love to see to go up. The other 2 things you love. But the other thing about last year's stats were that Metcalf was still there. Lockett was still there. There was other guys taking attention away. Now, they signed Cooper Kupp after cutting Lockett and trading Metcalf and drafted the Tony Horton kid, which they're probably hoping replaces the Lockett opportunity. But Cubs still got hands, man. He's still a good route runner. He's still a professional. He's still going to take opportunities away. Okay, let's say that's Metcalf's opportunities. And Horton does what Lockett does last year. Well, then great. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be the number one receiver again. We've never seen Jackson Smith and Jigba be the number one receiver in the pros. He's always had Metcalf on the other side. That's no matter how you feel about DK Metcalf, having that big monster over there is going to take attention away from what Jackson Smith and Jigba was doing. I'm not falling for another Juju Smith-Schuster. So I'm not going to overpay to get JSN as a top 10 receiver, top 12 receiver, when I've never seen him be that without someone taking the attention away. For that reason, I got him at 17 because I still have, like I said, I'm not falling for another Juju where when AB left and Juju just couldn't be the number one wide receiver. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is a super talented receiver. I hope that he proves me wrong and finishes the top 10 receiver, especially if I draft him in some leagues. But having him as my number one is a questionable thing. He ended up that as my mock draft. I didn't feel very well about it. I did a mock draft a couple weeks ago. You can go back and watch it. But at the end of the day, I wasn't happy to have Jackson Smith and Jigba as my number one receiver. I would have much rather had him as my number two. So that's why I got him as a number two receiver. Number 16, Tyreek Hill. Now, last year, Tyreek Hill banged up, had a wrist injury, I think it was like a groin or a knee. I forget what ankle, something with his legs. And they didn't do a lot of reporting on that the whole season. They did, I'm sure they're in trouble. They could get in trouble if they come out and say exactly what was wrong now. But on top of that, with Tyreek Hill and to his injury history, I can't put him up as a top 10 receiver anymore. And is he done? I don't think he is. Is he going to ever be the same player he was with KC or the first couple of years of Miami? Probably not. I think Waddle and him are going to have very similar stats. Maybe Waddle has a little less than him. I don't have him in the top 25 just because his injury histories and what is going on with Miami. Tyreek Hill, I got a 16 simply for the fact of I think Waddle could take enough away from him to where he can't be a top 10 receiver, but I think Tyreek Hill is still going to be a good receiver. I'm just not willing to say I'm drafting you as a number one anymore. You were a top 5 receiver draft pick last year, and it bit everybody in the ass. Well, you learn or you get bit in the ass again. That's your answer. That's your options here. Tyreek Hill is still damn good talent, still one of the fastest guys in the NFL. I need to see him get back to being the player he was before I rank him as a top 10 receiver anymore. And I could probably move him up a couple spots here over to some of these other guys, but it's just guys I like, man. And if I'm drafting, I'm going to pick this guy over that guy based on how I feel about their offense, how I feel about their opportunities. And with Jonnu and Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane, they have plenty of other receiving options where they're not forcing it to Tyreek. Last year, he had 81 for 959 and 6. Didn't play every game and still had a damn good season for a number 2 receiver. And that's the point. That's how I'm going to draft him this year as a number 2 receiver and hope that he gets back to what he's doing. I'm just not willing to pay the price to be wrong. So at the end of the day, I got him at 16. We'll move on to number 15. That's formerly mentioned, DK Metcalf, Pittsburgh Steelers. We know about the trade from Seattle to Pittsburgh. Now they've signed Aaron Rodgers. That puts DK Metcalf up higher on the board because one thing we know about Rodgers is he will over-target a receiver, his number 1 receiver. Jordy Nelson, Devonte Adams, Garrett Wilson before Adams got there, then Adams with the Jets last year. He is hyper-targeting his number 1 wide receiver. DK Metcalf is still a monster of a man. He is still one of the most physically gifted NFL players and definitely NFL wide receivers. And you give him with a quarterback who's still got accuracy, don't fool yourself. I don't think Rodgers is the player he was, and I'm never going to be a huge Rodgers fan, but I still think he has the arm talent to get DK Metcalf the ball on a regular basis. After they traded Pickens away, they're still looking for another receiving option, which I know that was a whole attitude, contract, all that stuff. But they need some more receiving options if they want to be a true threat as an offense. But for fantasy, Metcalf should be hyper-targeted this year, barring an addition. I think Heath Miller should have a good year. I think Jalen Warren will still have a good year, even though they got Caleb Johnson. But I don't see Metcalf having a bad year by any means. I definitely think he's going to outperform last year's stats, which were 66 for 992 and 5. I could definitely see Metcalf going for 80, 1,200, and 10. And without question, if you do that, you're going to be real fucking happy. He's probably going to finish as the 8th, 9th, 10th best receiver, and you got him a value at number 15. Some people got him lower than this. I've seen DK Metcalf in the 20s, which I think is a fucking abomination. But that's my opinion. And that's all I can give you right now. I think DK Metcalf should be expected to hit 80 catches and 1,200 yards and hope he hits that double-digit touchdown mark because Rodgers loves throwing to a big receiver in the end zone. Those back shoulder fades, all that good stuff is a Rodgers specialty, and DK Metcalf is the guy you want to be throwing to. So draft him, smile, enjoy the success. Number 14, Scary Terry McLaurin. McLaurin S-Series, whatever the hell they call him in the racing car. Look, Terry didn't get no competition in Washington. I know he's going through this contract thing right now. I believe Washington's going to pay him. They got some money to spend, so it's not like they can't afford it. He is 30 years old. I think they should give him a 3-year deal and give him a raise. I've already said that. No, I don't think he deserves $35 million a year. I do think he deserves to be paid based off the year he just had, based off all the shit he's put up with. Sometimes you got to pay a guy for being a team leader and a veteran for you that's stuck through the thick and the thin. And Terry McLaurin's still a damn good receiver and been through the worst of it with you. Now pay him while you're going to enjoy the best with Jaden Daniels. You got him on a rookie contract with Jaden Daniels. Now's the time to pay those vets that deserve it. That's how you run a good organization. Washington, make sure you're changing the tune of what you've been. All right? You got Dan Quinn there, great signing. You drafted Jaden, great. Now pay your number one wide receiver because that's what he is. Last year, McLaurin had, what did he finish with? 82 catches for almost 1,100 yards, had 1096 and 13 touchdowns. Maybe he only hits 10 touchdowns this year, but I think he could hit that 1,200-yard mark, and I think he could hit that probably 90-catch mark if given the amount of opportunities that I think could come his way. They still got Zach Ertz, the vet. They drafted the senator, Ben Sinnott, as to back up Ertz. Obviously, they drafted him 2 years ago. And if he comes on, even better. But other than that, McLaurin's your option, man. They still got Noah Brown. They drafted the Jalen Lane kid. But right now, Terry McLaurin is your number one. So, Washington, if you ain't willing to pay him, I don't know who you are willing to pay. Because he's the guy that's going to carry your team with the receiving options. Get this man on your fantasy team. I believe, if he's in a contract year, he's going to be that much more valuable. If he holds out through the preseason, then I might drop McLaurin down a handful of spots just because I worry about his conditioning, everything else. You saw it last year with Ayuk. There's always a player that holds out, comes into the season, gets banged up because he's not in shape. Do I have that concern with McLaurin? Maybe. I don't think that's an issue for him, but I do think it's something you should always consider and why I would draft him or drop him down my rankings if he doesn't get signed before preseason ends, or really before the preseason starts, because they only get 3 games. He probably won't even play, but maybe one of them. I need to see him out there in shape, running routes. But right now, I think McLaurin could finish as a top 10 receiver, 8th, 9th, 10th best receiver. So I got him here. I think you should draft him with confidence. I don't think you should have any questions about McLaurin. If you get him as a high number 2, you're going to be happy as hell with him on your team. Number 13, oldie but goodie, Mr. Devonte Adams, who I spoke about a little bit ago going to the Jets. Now he ends up with the Rams. I already said it on social media. I said another video about going to get Stafford for a veteran quarterback. I think he's like 13th best quarterback on my list, 15th, somewhere around there. I think the Rams are going to have a really good offense this year, especially for fantasy. With Nakua, Adams, and Kyron Williams, and Terrence Ferguson, I think you should be very happy drafting any of those guys this year, including Stafford. The Rams offense is the one I want parts of this year. I got Devonte Adams here at 13 because I think he's still a damn good receiver. I think he could actually finish ahead of Puka Ngata, depending on situation, depending on Nakua's health. But right now I got him a few spots behind him, and I got him here at 13 just because he is getting older and he's the new guy to the team. Now, I don't think that's going to stop Stafford from throwing the ball, so don't fool yourself. But I love Devonte Adams as the receiving option, period. I had him on my team last year. I've had him a couple other times in fantasy when I could draft him because he's always a damn good receiver to have. He's a guy that's going to get you stats. And if he ends with 90 for 1,200 and 8 to 10 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns, you're going to be a happy camper getting him a 13th player as the 13th receiver. So, number 12, T. Higgins. Mr. Higgins just got his money, got paid. What was it, like 28, 30 million a year? Something. I think it was 28. That's what he ended up getting. And they're going to have to score 50 points, man. Like I talked about Jermaine Pratt, there's another guy gone off that defense. Higgins might get some interceptions this year if he has to play corner. I'm not sure. But Higgins is definitely going to get a shit ton of catches because they're going to have to score 45 points a game, 40 to 50 points a game if they expect on winning a lot of games because they ain't got nobody playing defense right now. Hendrickson's sitting out. The rookies ain't playing because of the contracts language, and now they drop Jermaine Pratt. So I'm not sure what Cincinnati's doing on defense, but I know what they're doing on offense, and that's throwing the shit out of the ball. Another one of those offenses, I want all the players. Give me Higgins, give me Chase, give me Burrow, give me Chase Brown. I want them all. Simply for the fact that I think they're going to have to score a shit ton of points. That's why I got Higgins ranked this high. He's a risky player. We all know that. We know his injury history. But when Higgins is on the field, man, he's something special. And that's just facts. He's one of the most physically gifted receivers in the NFL. His biggest problem is staying healthy. If he can get that down, he's definitely finished as a top 8 receiver. So just something to keep in mind. I got him here at 12 because I'm willing to draft him that high. I have that much confidence in the ability of T. Higgins. Number 11, guy I just mentioned, I got these one spot apart, Puka Ngata. That's who I got here. I love Puka Ngata. He helped me win a championship his rookie year 2 years ago. But we all know about his injury history. He was banged up in college. He was banged up last year. He even got nicked up a little bit his rookie year. I have to be able to trust Puka Ngata before I rank him as the 7th, 8th best receiver. And until he proves he can stay healthy for a season or two in a row, I can't draft him as a top 10 receiver. Even if I think that's where he can finish, I can't draft him there. I'm not paying that price to have an injured guy on my team. Puka Ngata is a super talented receiver. Like I said, I want pieces of that Rams offense, and I'm probably going to end up drafting Adams because Puka's going to get drafted higher than I want to pick him. That's fine with me. I'll take either one of them. I'm definitely trying to get a piece of Terrence Ferguson in the league I got, and Kyron Williams is still the touchdown machine at running back. But last year with the injuries and everything, Ngata only finished with 79 catches for 990 and 3. He was banged up. He had 46 rush yards and a rushing touchdown. And you always love to see him when they're used in other opportunities. That's just more fantasy points on top of it. But with the injury history, that's why I got him and Higgins right here by each other, man. They're both guys that I would love to put in the top 10. I just can't because of the injury histories. Puka Ngata is still one of the most talented receivers. I loved how well he fits that offense. That's why I talk about with Terrence Ferguson, with him, Devonte Adams, all great route running, in and out routes, slants, cuts, corners, all that stuff, the zig routes, hitch routes, all that stuff is great for all these players in that Rams offense. They fit the players to the offense they want to run. That's why I'm big on getting Stafford this year. That's why I'm big on getting Rams players this year, because I think they've done exactly what they need to do to be a true competitor this year for NFL standards. And for fantasy, it's just going to be beneficial for all those players. So, but like I said, him and Adams, both receivers I'm looking to draft. Some people got Adams further down. You get him at a better value. I understand the need to take him instead of overpaying for Puka Ngata. But at the end of the day, I got Puka just outside the top 10. It's not any shot at Puka's talent. It's just about his health thing. I got to question it. Number 10 is Mr. A.J. Brown. Book reading on the sidelines, A.J. Brown. I know everybody loves the hotshot Devonte Smith, but A.J. Brown is still the number one. He's still the alpha on this team. And you've seen it when he had that run, what was it, 2 years ago when he had 5 for 125 and a touchdown for like 7 straight games. A.J. Brown is still a number one receiver. A.J. Brown is still a dominant receiver when given the opportunities, and that's why he's number 10, because like I talked about with Devonte Smith earlier, the opportunities are going to be spread out. A.J. Brown is probably the 5th best receiver in the league. I just can't put him that high knowing that the opportunities are going to be spread around. But I still want pieces of A.J. Brown, so I got to put him in the top 10 because I got to tell myself, make sure you draft this guy if given the opportunity. Obviously, some of these other guys ahead of him, I got ahead of him just because the amount of opportunities they're going to get. But A.J. Brown is still an alpha wide receiver. And don't ever fool yourself about that. I think he's still got at least 2 years left of being that guy. This year, next year, maybe a third year. But I think we could definitely see Devonte Smith take the opportunities away over the course of the next 2 years. But this year, I still got A.J. Brown as the alpha in that offense. And I believe they're going to have to pass more, simply for the fact that I just don't think they're going to have the same success running. 2,000 yards from Saquon and 700 yards from 650, 700 yards, something like that from Jalen Hurts. These are all great numbers. Are they going to have those repeat of those years? I doubt it. I think Jalen's going to end up with around 450, but I think he's going to pass for more than 2,900. I think he's going to end up around 3,500 this year. I think you're still going to see the same similar offensive stats. I just think some will come more from passing than it did rushing last year. Teams are going to be piling up on Saquon and Jalen Hurts' run game. That's going to open some opportunities deeper for A.J. Brown, Devonte Smith, Godare, all those guys. And that's why I got A.J. Brown in here at 10. Number 9, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver for the New York Jets. Mentioned him earlier. He kind of went away with Adams, end up with the Jets because of Rodgers and Adams' best friend, BFF tattoos they got. And you understand the comfortable situation with Rodgers and Adams. They played together for years. Wilson got kind of ran out of that because the offense wasn't great. He still got catches, still had his games, but he did more of his damage earlier in the season. Whereas this year, he's got Justin Fields. And maybe you guys don't remember what DJ Moore did a couple years ago with Chicago, where he had, I think it was, I want to say 1,500, but I know it was over 1,400 yards with Chicago with Justin Fields as a starting quarterback. And Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson played together in college, I believe, for a year. So they know each other. And Justin Fields still can wing the ball downfield, guys. He can still provide for a number 1 wide receiver. Like I said, I had Justin Fields as a top 12 quarterback for me this year, simply because of his rushing ability and where he's at, what they're going to do with that offense. But Garrett Wilson is still the alpha, like I said. They signed Josh Reynolds. I forgot all about that. I know I talked about the Arian Smith kid. I forgot about them signing Josh Reynolds, who I absolutely love. I think Dan Campbell once called him the praying mantis because that's how he is. He goes out there and snatches the ball. Josh Reynolds is still a good receiver. You'd love to have him as your number 3 instead of your number 2, but Josh Reynolds is a guy you can trust to go get a first down. Lions fans would disagree because of 2 drops in the NFC Championship game, but one of those balls was Jared Goff's fault. The other one he blatantly dropped, and it's something I didn't expect. I've always thought Josh Reynolds was a good receiver to have on your team, guy you can count on to go get you 10, 12 yards when you need it, and let Garrett Wilson be that true number 1. Garrett Wilson, number 9, I think is good value for him. He's a guy that can finish as a top 6 receiver. I don't think he can finish as number 1, but I definitely think he could move up a handful of spots from where I got him ranked. But right now, he's the number 1 there in New York, and I'm going to trust him as such. Number 8, another guy got drafted in the same draft, Drake London. Drake London is a guy that we've been waiting to get a real quarterback. That's just it. We were all excited last year when he got Kirk Cousins. It didn't work out. This year, they got Michael Penix. I told you guys how I feel about the Michael Penix video in the quarterback video. I love the guy. I think it even helps him more that he got to sit behind Cousins, because that's what I think you should do with rookies, is sit behind a veteran for a year. Now, some guys come out, Jaden Daniels, they snap. Other guys come out, they struggle, they never develop into anything. But like you see it with Anthony Richardson, I've given you my opinion on him as well in multiple videos. But the fact that Penix got to sit until the last 3 games only helps his projection for me. I think Penix is going to finish as a top 10 quarterback this year, probably. Definitely top 15. And Drake London's going to be a huge beneficiary of that. Him and Darnell Mooney, who ain't far behind that top 25 list, because I think you should be drafting Mooney in the top 35 for sure. So both his receivers, I think, are going to have great years, but Drake London is much more talented than Darnell Mooney. And Pitts has yet to prove he can be anything to count on. So it should be tons of Drake London this year, a guy you should be drafting, a guy you should be drafting a lot of, because I think Drake London's about to have his breakout last year. Last year he had 100 catches for 1271 and 9. I think he could hit over 100 catches again and probably hit 1,500 yards, along with like 14, 15 touchdowns this year. I think Drake London's about to explode along with Michael Penix. I think that's going to be a great combo we're going to have fun watching for years to come in fantasy. You might not be a fan of it if you're in the NFC South, but for fantasy, you should be excited as hell about Michael Penix and Drake London being together for years. And go draft him this year. That's all I can say. Number 7, superstar receiver. Another guy got rookie from last year, Malik Neighbors, who got a huge quarterback improvement just for the fact that they got 3 more guys that are better than any of the guys they had last year. I would take Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart over Daniel Jones or anybody else they threw out there last year. Plain and simple. So he's already got an improvement. We're going to start the season with Russ, barring some explosion from Jackson Dart and them changing their mind. But I think Dart could end up being in the second half of the season as the Giant. I don't think the Giants are going to win a lot of games this year, but I don't think that's going to affect Neighbors. Last year, Neighbors went for, 109, 1,204 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I think you should be expecting very similar to that. He could get over 100 catches, over 1,200 yards, and I'd love to see him hit that double-digit touchdown mark. If he does, he could finish as a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy this year. He gets the double-digit touchdowns with those stats, he's going to finish as a top 5 wide receiver. I would love to see him get 13, 14 touchdowns and hit 1,300 yards, which Malik Neighbors is fully capable of, guys. Plain and simple. He is a super talented kid. I think we got a lot of wide receiver explosiveness that we didn't have in years past over the last couple of years that's come into the league. And it's only making it easier to draft wide receivers that you can count on. Malik Neighbors is a guy you can count on. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to force him the ball necessarily, but I think just having better quarterback play is going to help him ascend, at least to where he was and beyond. So I'm expecting big things out of Neighbors. I got him as a 7th just simply because I like these other guys' situations better. Starting with number 6, that's Brian Thomas Jr. I had Brian Thomas Jr. last year after a trade. Couldn't have been happier. Brian Thomas Jr. last year finished with 87 for 1,282 and 10. He got the double-digit touchdowns. He didn't even do 100 catches. That was with a lot of Mac Jones, too. I would like to put Thomas higher, but with Trevor Lawrence, he only averaged like 4 catches a game. So I can't put him up in the top 5, which is where I want to do it, because I love Brian Thomas Jr. I think he's amazing. He was a rookie I was trying to draft last year, ended up making a trade for him. Love to have him on my team again this year. I think you should be considering – I understand if you want to take Neighbors over him because of the Travis Hunter thing. I understand if you want to take London over him because of the Travis Hunter thing and Michael Penix, and maybe you don't trust Trevor Lawrence. I'm just telling you, I think what the Jags can be this year, I think the attention Hunter is going to draw away when he's on the field is only going to help Brian Thomas Jr. And the loss of Evan Ingram is only going to help Brian Thomas Jr. I think he can hit 100 catches this year. I think he can hit 1,400 yards this year. And I think he can hit that 12 touchdown mark this year. So Brian Thomas Jr. is a guy you should be drafting to look at, similar to some of those guys at the top, the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases. He's a guy that I think is going to take that next step this year where he's just dominating all year long. So draft him with confidence, draft him and smile, because you're going to be happy all season long. Number 5, the guy that is another guy that I thought about maybe putting Neighbors or Thomas ahead of, but I just love this guy, man, and that's Nico Collins. Last year, Nico missed some time, but he still ended with 68 catches for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. And that's with missing, I think it was 4 games last year. Man, he might have missed more. He might have missed 5. I forgot to look at that, how many games he missed last year. But the guy had almost 70 catches and 1,000 yards, missing 4 or 5 games last year. Imagine what he could do in a full season. Now, Houston fell apart last year. Every receiver got hurt. Running back got a little banged up with Mixon getting, just being older in second half of the season. Offensive line was in shambles. They've tried to eradicate that. They've tried to fix that situation on the offensive line. But what I don't have doubt in is what Nico Collins can do. In a full season of Nico Collins, he can finish as the number 1 wide receiver, guys. That's why I got him here at 5. I'm not projecting that. I'm just saying he can. You give Nico Collins a full season, 16, 17 games, I think he's going to end up with 110, 115 catches, probably 1,500 yards, maybe 1,600, and like 12, 14 touchdowns. I think Nico Collins can finish as the number 1 wide receiver, and this is where that list starts, is number 1, guys that can finish number 1 without question. Barring health, Nico Collins can finish the number 1 wide receiver. So draft him with confidence. I don't think I need to say too much about him. I'm still a believer in Stroud. I still think he's one of the best receivers, and he's fucking huge, man. So it's a nice, easy target for Stroud to throw to. Number 4, who I still believe is the best route runner in the league, who I think is one of the best receivers in the league, period. I just have my questions why I can't put him up higher, a few spots higher at number 2, and that's Justin Jefferson, because I have to see J.J. McCarthy do it. Now, Justin Jefferson finished with 103 catches last year, 1,533 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And that was with Sam Darnold. A lot of people had questions about Sam Darnold, myself included, but I've always believed in Sam Darnold. I've always thought he had the physical gifts to come out there and perform like he did last year. Now he has to prove it in Seattle this year when he switches teams and all that other stuff, which I didn't even get into that with JSN. He's got a new quarterback. I think that's part of why I got him down there too. I forgot to mention that, but Jefferson getting a new quarterback, I think Jefferson's a much better receiver than JSN, period. Just hands down, no questions asked about it. I think Jefferson is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. I love Justin Jefferson, but I'm not a huge J.J. McCarthy guy. Now, you see some videos, he's throwing balls on a rope, man, on a line, just zipping it in there. You love to see that. Never had a question about that. My question is just, can he run an offense and can he carry the load as a quarterback? Which not necessarily they're going to ask him to carry load, but can he throw 450 times, you know what I mean, without any issues? Can he throw the ball a shit ton of times? Because Minnesota's defense still needs improvement. They got some great defensive linemen they signed as free agents. Great, it's going to apply more pressure, but they still need help on the back end. Maybe they sign a Jair Alexander, like I said. Maybe they trade for Jalen Ramsey. But they're still going to have to score points, and that's going to give Justin Jefferson plenty of opportunities to be as great as he always has been. I just don't think he's going to go hit 1,500 yards again. I don't. I think he's going to hit like 1,200, 1,300 yards. I think he still probably hits the 100-catch mark. I hope he has more than 10 touchdowns. Maybe he gets 12, 13, 14. I just think Jefferson's yards are going to come down a little bit with Hockenson being healthy for the full season, Addison taking that next step, and the Ty Felton guy that they signed I like a lot. I think they're going to have to spread the ball out a little bit more. Aaron Jones is still running back there catching passes, and JJ is going to be using those shorter routes. JJ McCarthy, not JJ Justin Jefferson, but JJ McCarthy is, I think, just as a first-time starter in the NFL, he's going to be trying to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker to those shorter guys. I think that raises Jones' stock up. I think it raises Hawkinson's stock up a little bit. But Justin Jefferson's still Justin Jefferson. I still expect him to have a number one wide receiver in fantasy. I just don't think it's going to be the number one overall. Can he finish that? Absolutely. He's one of the most talented players in the NFL at wide receiver. I'm not projecting that. I think he's going to finish as the fourth or fifth best receiver. And you're going to be happy with that, no problem. I don't want to advise you to draft him as the number one or number two receiver because I think there's guys that can finish ahead of him. And you got to take that risk with the new quarterback into play. Number three, guy I had as number one last year. He finished as number two. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I still have full confidence in Amon-Ra. Obviously, I love the Detroit Lions, but they didn't add anybody to really threaten his targets. That's the biggest thing to me. I think Jamo's going to take the next step. I think the Lions are going to have to pass more than they did last year. Simply because of the changes to the offensive line. You lost Frank Ragnow, a Hall of Fame all-pro center. Kevin Zeiler, former Pro Bowl, longtime veteran. He came signed with us for 1 year last year. He's gone. So we got some new changes to the offensive line. I think we may get into a couple more situations where we got to pass the ball even more. I still expect St. Brown, who had 115 for 1263 and 12 last year, I think he can finish with similar stats to that. Maybe it's 105 and maybe it's 1180 and 10. You're still going to be happy with Amon-Ra St. Brown stats. He's still going to finish as a top 6 wide receiver, and that's what you're looking for when you're drafting a guy this high. But Amon-Ra is a guy that could definitely finish with 130 catches if they need be, because he's that type of receiver. So you take that chance. You draft him as a number one. Even if you take Jefferson over Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm not going to – oh, my God, I can't believe you did that. I think Jefferson is probably the better receiver. I just like Amon-Ra St. Brown's situation a little bit better because nothing really changed to the offense as far as pass catching options other than Tesla. And I don't think he's a threat to Amon-Ra St. Brown's targets at all. So I got Amon-Ra up here as the number 3. Move on to number 2. That's CeeDee Lamb. Some people had CeeDee as the number 1 last year. I wasn't as confident in Dallas as a whole, period. I have more faith in Dallas this year, and I think with the addition of George Pickens, that's going to help CeeDee. CeeDee's the type of guy that can finish with 120, 130 catches. He had 101 for 1194 and 6 last year, dealing with a shoulder injury the second half of the season. This guy still had 100 catches and 1,200 yards. I think his touchdown number will probably get up to around 10 this year. I think he could hit 1,300 yards again, no problem, and hit that 100-catch mark, no problem. And I think with the addition of some of the offensive linemen, Pickens to take some attention away, they still got Ferguson, and they got Jaden Blue coming out the backfield, and Javonte Williams coming out the backfield, both capable receiving options. You're going to see some of the attention taken away from CeeDee, and CeeDee's still one of the best receivers in the league. So that's going to open up things for him and Dak to connect on. Dak's getting drafted higher to me on my rankings. CeeDee Lamb's back in the top 3 to me. That's how I feel about CeeDee Lamb. I think he's still one of the most talented receivers in the league, and I think with the extra attention that won't be paid attention to him, there's going to be defenses that have to account for George Pickens, that account for those receiving options coming out of the backfield. And that's going to take just a little bit of enough attention away from CeeDee Lamb that he could get back into that number 1 conversation. But at number 1, we got Mr. Triple Crown. That's Jamar Chase, one of the most physically gifted players in the NFL. Last year, he went for 127, 1,700 yards, and 17 touchdowns. That's fucking ridiculous, man. I was worried for Calvin Johnson's number for a little bit. Like Calvin Johnson set it the record, I think it was 68 or something like that, 63, somewhere around there, for total yards in her season. Now he did it in 16 games. They got an extra game, but all the same, Jamar Chase he averaged 100 yards a game, averaged a touchdown a game. I don't know what else you're looking for. Like, that's just the facts. You should be drafting him as the number one wide receiver, as a top 7 player in the draft. I get it if you want to take a running back or something like that. And this isn't a super flex as far as concerned. I think there should be 4 or 5 quarterbacks taken, Jamar Chase and Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, whichever running back you love. But Jamar Chase should definitely be the number one wide receiver off the board. There's no question about that. So I don't think there's much to say about that. I think if T. Higgins plays a couple more games, maybe Jamar ends with 115 catches, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns. He takes a little bit off that. I don't expect him to repeat these numbers, but I don't expect him to be far off from these numbers, period. I still think Jamar Chase is going to have plenty of opportunities. And like I said, Cincinnati should have to score 40 to 45 points a game if they expect to compete on a regular basis and winning. And they're going to do that by throwing the hell out of the ball. Joe Burrow hit 4,900 yards last year. He could hit 5,100 this year. That's just the facts. So expect Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to be huge beneficiaries of that, along with Chase Brown. So Jamar Chase, number one. Hope you guys enjoyed the list. Tell me if you disagree. Tell me if I got your guy ranked too low, too high, whatever you want to tell me. Until next time, we're going to get out of here. Hope you guys are having a good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time you're listening. Till next time, guys, I'm out. First down, punts.